Welcome to this video, round 3 coverage of the candidates tournament in Khanty-Mansisk. And this game examined in this video is the game Andreikin against Karjakin. You need to check what the players did before to better evaluate this game. Both players lost in round 2. Karjakin lost his game against Kramnik in this intense battle in the Queen's Gambit accepted, but Andreikin lost with black as well against Svidler, who played an excellent game against Andreikin's Sicilian Kalashnikov. So both players suffered a loss in the round before, now on -1. So very modest start for this tournament, and certainly a second loss is the end of all hopes. So certainly both players maybe want to try a bit, but certainly don't want to risk it all, because as mentioned, the second loss is basically the end of all. So let's see what happened. Andreikin plays 1 e4. He had played 1 d4 in the first round against Kramnik, so he has both moves in his repertoire. And Karjakin goes for the Berlin defense in the Rui. Not a super exciting choice, but the Berlin is nowadays one of the absolute main lines of double king pawn. It's extremely solid, and black experiences little theoretical problems, so it's an understandable choice. Still, it's not very exciting most of the time. Andreikin now plays d3, which is very often seen nowadays. People really fail to show anything in the classic Berlin wall endgame.
Check.
It seems that black is holding his own. Yeah, it's d3 again, as we have seen in the World Championship match last year, and also in some later games. Bishop c5, the main move, just developing the bishop to a good square. And now c3. Yeah, here both Carlsen and Anand have played bishop takes c6, and they played this structure where, for instance, Carlsen won a really impressive game in the tournament in Zurich just a couple of weeks ago against Caruana. Yeah, but white here played c3, Andreikin, trying to keep more pieces on the board and not simplify too much. Karjakin just castles. Note that, just to complete this overview, note that white is ill-advised to take here because of this funny move. Black threatening mate and threatening to win the knight, just to show that the e5 pawn is safe. c3, and now castles. Yeah, again, you can ask what happens if white decides to be greedy. The point is that after this, black is playing d5, a very quick opening of the center, and white is in some trouble here already. He needs to think badly about equalizing. You can absolutely not grab even more material here. Queen e8 is a real problem. So white shouldn't be greedy. He just castled, which is a wise decision. And Karjakin plays d6. So a very classical setup by the black player, which could have easily be the same setup against the Italian game. Yeah, like the bishop on c4. Here it is on b5. Other than that, it could easily, it's a very similar type of structure. Yeah, the interesting move here, however, is knight d2, and the next one by black, knight d2, is very normal. Karjakin now plays knight e7. This move wasn't well known a couple of years ago, but has become popular, and it's in my mind a very good way to play for black. Yeah, why is that? Why should he move the knight a second time? There is a good reason for that. The thing is that the knight, if he put it back on c6, is severely limited by the pawns on c3. By the pawn on c3, the knight is not doing so much. It looks at squares that are controlled by white. Very often, this is a problem piece for black. He really likes to regroup it, and g6 is a good place. So why not knight e7? Black intends knight g6 and will play c6 to win a tempo on white's bishop. Sometimes you get a completely symmetrical position out of that. For example, if white now plays something like that, just have a look. Note that in this case it's even black who has won a tempo because c6, bishop c4 happened. So 2 moves to go to c4. This is black's general idea, putting the knight on g6 and play c6. White in this game, however, didn't play rook e1. He tried to do something immediately, played d4, striking in the center. Yeah, and now we see black's idea. Obviously, he does not want to retreat. This gives up e5. He wants to and needs to take. And now retreat. At first sight, this looks rather dubious. Why would black give up the center? But it has some reason. It has some reasoning behind it. The idea is to play d5, and we see this soon. This this whole setup by black is viable because of the somewhat awkward position of the bishop on b5 and the knight on d2. The knight would be on c3, for example. This is far less interesting, black's play. But here, look at this, white played h3, a very sensible move. There is bishop g4 as a potential setup, so he prevents that. After d5 now e5. This is necessary. If white elects to take, black has a very nice position against the isolated pawn, where white's pieces and this key pieces, yeah, knight on d2 and on b5, are both misplaced. If white wants to fight for anything like an advantage, he needs to play e5. And now knight e4. So we see that black has managed to alter the central pawn structure. He has centralized this knight nicely on e4. The knight on e7 has potential on the king side, and black has, at a later stage, c5 available to further attack the center. So I really like this setup for black. I think it's a very nice way to develop. He now played bishop d3. Andreikin did. Yeah, the bishop is not doing much on b5. Here he at least attacks the knight. And Karjakin now plays... No, that's a bit too much. Just bishop f5. Yeah, it protects the knight and introduces some tactical possibilities, because this is just unprotected, this bishop. So white must be alert. You cannot play a move like, let's say, a3 because of knight f2. And black is almost winning the game already. So white must react to that, and he did. He played queen e2, very natural move. And this also intends to win a pawn. So black's next move is basically forced, but it is completely sufficient. He played the knight back to c6. Yeah, now it's simply a different situation than when he moved it away just 6 moves ago. Now on c6, the knight is not looking at the pawn on c3, but it looks at d4 and makes some very serious pressure on this weak spot. Yeah, it's actually 2 times attacked, and how should white cover it? If white now would decide on a passive move to cover it, knight b3, for example, we would now have on the board a game that was played last year between Peter Swidler and Erwin Lamy, one of the top Dutch players. After f6, Lamy had a decent position. He attacked the center. There's also an alternative, which I also, knight b3. And there's also a5, which I also like, trying to yeah, kick the knight away. And with f6 later, black has very decent pressure. I really like black here. Swidler later won the game, but it happened later in a long end game, so it was not related to the opening. Black is completely fine here. However, knight b3 is probably the move you need to play if you want to fight. Andreikin now played rook to d1, and this basically accepts a complete clearance of the center. Black now has a move that that basically kills the game, and Karjakin decides to do that. He takes on d4 with his bishop. A knight takes was also possible. If you look at this, something like that is also a possibility, or it should lead to equal play. The game he took with the bishop, and now after knight takes, d takes e4, bishop e4. At first it looks a bit awkward for black because he's got this standoff between the rook and the queen on d8, but it does not seem to be a big problem. After bishop e4 here by white, he even captured, and now we see the idea. If white now recaptures, there's bishop
Check.
takes f2, and black even wins the exchange and the game. So we cannot do that. White must take here on d4, which leads to further exchanges after queen d5. What black could not do, black could not take here. This is leading to problems. It's a pin, and you have no discovered check. After c5, bishop e3, white will here win a pawn on d4. So black does not have any choice really. He must play queen to d5, but that's also a good move. This introduces this idea. e5 is hanging. Yeah, and white does not really have much else. He took on c6, queen takes, and f3, stopping the diagonal pressure. Black needed to retreat it to d5, and now b3. Yeah, we see that we have some traits in the position. There are only opposite colored bishops left, and in fact it's one of those positions where both bishops don't have much scope. White can put this bishop on b2 or on a3 where it attacks nothing. On the long diagonal, white will always look at their own pawn, and black's bishop is also basically biting on granite. Everything's nicely protected. After a5, bishop a3, rook d8,
Check.
rook c1, queen b6, check. Yeah, we had some further moves, but it's simply a really dead position. Very difficult to make any sort of headway, and there's even some leeway for inaccurate play. It still will be a draw. They exchange a bit more.
Check.
And now went for this repetition to wrap the game up. So what can you say? It's a dull game. You don't have great games all the time, and this is one of those rather dull draws. It is, however, theoretically interesting for players who play the Berlin defense, which you might say, oh, why should I play the Berlin? Isn't this somewhat boring opening? Yeah, well, it's not like an ultra sharp opening, that's clear, but it's an opening for a black player, very much suited for a black player who wants to get a game going and wants to fight in long games. A player who does not mind end games, and on the other hand does not want to get involved in any heavy theoretical preparation, because especially if you consider that you're not playing on a world championship level, if you play this against a player which is similar in strength to you, or even slightly better maybe, you have very good chances to get a playable game and you won't get out prepared or anything. You just have a game of chess to play, which is I think a good thing. It's not like you need to learn by heart forced moves and stuff. This makes it an interesting choice, I think, for the amateur player who does not mind, as mentioned, somewhat technical or very sometimes a bit simplified positions like in the Berlin endgame. Important is that d3 is played often, really, and this position here black can easily get against all kinds of opposition. And here this knight e7 move is an interesting way to play that maybe a black player should consider in their own games. All right, I hope you liked it. Anyway, it's simply, as mentioned, you cannot have those kind of epic battles every day. Thanks for watching.